President of the French Creek Curling Club, and as a couple of folks here will know, that we always start curling by saying, good curling.
Good curling.
When we start a curling match, right? So everyone says good curling, and then we flip a coin to see what's going to happen next, who's going to go first. So if I were to win the coin toss, most people will choose to go second because having the last stone is a big advantage. And if you were to win the coin toss, you would go second. So we'll flip and we'll see if you're going to do the presentation or if I'm going to do the, no, I'm just kidding. I'll do the presentation. So everybody's very friendly. It's a game with a lot of sportsmanship. But before we really get into curling, I just want to talk a little bit about the Meadville community. One of the things that was asked before I started the presentation was, where am I from? And I actually live in Girard, Pennsylvania, about 35 minutes north of here. So sort of as someone who comes to the Meadville community, and I also pass through the Meadville community with some good friends in Cochranton, you know, Meadville's a pretty special place. You've got a lot of vibrant economic activity here. There's a lot of recreational opportunity here with hiking trails and with Conneaut Lake nearby. You're rich with educational resources with Allegheny here, access to world-class healthcare with Meadville Medical Center here. And there's easy access to major cities like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Buffalo, and even Toronto if you wanted to go up the road maybe 4.5 hours. So Meadville's a pretty special community, and Meadville is a place that should be pretty proud of itself. Some communities have not sort of rebounded in the ways that Meadville has. In fact, I'm not sure Meadville ever really had to. There's always been a lot of tool and die activity here. So how did I start curling? I talked about those major cities that are nearby. So my wife and I went to a Learn to Curl in Pittsburgh. And we liked it an awful lot, and being just off of Interstate 90 up in Girard, we joined a club in Cleveland. So, because it was the closest for us at the time, it was about an hour and 15 minutes each direction. We'd curl for 2 hours, sometimes we'd have dinner, and it was sort of our date day. We would catch up in the car, we'd curl, sort of, you know, would be the entire evening from about like 3 in the afternoon till about 9 or 10 at night when we got home. But we recently started a family, and we did not have as much time as we used to have to do that. So I approached Mark and was able to meet and collaborate with a lot of great people, and we started curling here in Meadville. In fact, Jay Verno, one of the people I met and collaborated with, just walked in. So Meadville is really well situated actually for curling, right? We've got long winters. There's not a lot going on. You're not going to be in a golf league in the wintertime. And we were talking about, like this talk this evening, you know, people can kind of get locked into their mode in the wintertime. It's like, well, we go home and we sit on the couch and we watch that rerun that we always watch and maybe eat some leftovers, and then it's dark, and then what do we do, right? Well, curling really has a lot of benefits that will come up here as we go through this. You know, you're going to get a lot of exercise, you're going to meet people, you're going to socialize, and I think that comes up on one of our other slides. But I'll talk a little bit about the French Creek Curling Club. I think there were, Jay, what, 4 to 6 of us that kind of got together with the idea of putting this club together. I think it's been a good benefit for Mark. I may actually even just draw you up here in a second. But for a facility like Mark, you know, it brings in people that don't skate. It brings in a different demographic, and kind of brings in people who would use that, you know, wouldn't use that facility otherwise. That they haven't historically played hockey, they don't figure skate, they're, you know, but they're looking for something to do. And again, I'll harken back to like the idea of golf or, you know, some sort of activity like that. And so these are some folks that were at one of our, we called it experience curling. It wasn't a full learn to curl. The goal was, and I think, Nancy, were you at one of those events, or you just came on board with Meadville Medical Center in the leagues? We did a series of these events in the fall time after we secured rocks and got a number of things in place. And the idea behind these events was that we wanted to get people curling as quickly as possible. So we had some brief overview of the game. We had some brief instruction, but the notion was that if you could go out and have fun at this, you would come back and then really dive into the nuts and bolts and get good at the game, or as good as any given individual might want to get at the game. But as soon as you found out it was fun, you would be willing to come back and do more of it. And I like this shot because you can see the wide diversity in the club, right? We've got people who were maybe a little older on the spectrum, you've got some young people in the spectrum, and a bunch of people in the middle, and anyone can play the game of curling. In fact, this is somebody, not at our facility, but that's adaptive curling. He's stick curling, so whether you're 8 or 80, you can curl. So the game requires you to get down into these starting block looking things called hacks and to push out and slide out. And if you've maybe had a back problem, knee problem, you're in a wheelchair or something like that, you can stick curl so you don't have to go down into those hacks and do that. So literally at the club that I was at in Cleveland, I watched the juniors, which is a bunch of 8-year-olds, go out and curl, and then I curled with a guy on his 90th birthday. And he had been curling for a long time. It wasn't his first year, but anybody can curl. And you can get the hang of it pretty fast. Nancy walked in with the Meadville Medical Center team, and how long before you felt like you were like, oh yeah, I got this, we're having a good time, Nancy?
Well, probably on the second week.
The second week? Yeah. So about 2 hours in, you felt like, let's have a great time, right? We have 4 play surfaces at the rec complex, and each one would be thought of as a rink, and it's on the hockey surface that you would see when you went there. There's a lot of information on there, but you're sliding the granite about 140 feet. So you had said you were here because you wanted to know about the game before you saw it on the Olympics. So, okay, there's 4 people on a team. Each stone's about 42 pounds, 42 to 45 pounds. The play surface is 140 feet by about 15 feet wide, and there's this ring thing at the end, right? That's called the house. That's the target. That's what you're throwing at. And the goal is to get as close to the center as you can, closer than your opponent, okay? So you're going to score by being the closest to the center. And if you've got 3 rocks closer to the center than your opponent, you can score 3, but only one team scores at a time. Does that make sense? You're looking at me. So if I throw 3 close to the center and you've got 1 further out, I'm going to score 3. If I've got 1 close to the center and then you've got 1 behind that and I've got 2 over there, I'm just going to score the 1. Right? Okay? And the game's measured in ends. You can think about it like innings in baseball, right? So we throw all the stones to one end, then we're going to score the game, we're going to throw them back the other way. So down is one end, back is another end. In the Olympics, they play 10 ends. Most clubs play 8 or 6. Here in Meadville with the French Creek Curling Club, we play 6 ends, or try to get 6 ends in the ice time that we're able to purchase there. What's the sweeping about? So our ice is not like skating ice. Skating ice is very glossy and slick, and you see that shine on it. Our ice is pebbled, so basically we sprinkle water droplets on top of the ice. And when you sweep or brush in front of the rock, you're wearing a little bit of that pebble off, and you're melting it with that friction from sweeping. And you see on the Olympics where they yell at each other, and you know, that guy at the other end is the team captain, and he's yelling at them whether they want him to sweep or whether they don't want him to sweep. And when you sweep, you're melting a little bit of that ice, and those water droplets flow in between that pebble and will cause that rock to not speed up, but it slows down not as fast. So it will go further if you sweep, and it will also curl less if you sweep. So does the rock really curl? Nancy, does the rock really curl? Sometimes it does, she says. Yeah, it depends on your delivery and how you throw, but it can go anywhere from 2 to 5 feet. So if I threw directly at you, it could end up 5 feet to your left or 5 feet to your right, depending on how you throw and depending on the ice conditions and the humidity and the temperature. There's a little bit of rotation on the rock when you let go of it, and it will curl in the direction of that rotation. The more you sweep it, the less it's going to curl, and the further it's going to go. But it will curl, and that's how the game gets its name. And that curl will let you get behind other people's rocks as you're trying to get close to that center. The center of the house is called the button. So the team has 4 players. So there's the lead, the second, the third, or the vice. They're sort of like the co-captain, and then the skip, who's the guy at the other end who mostly yells and tells you what to do as far as sweeping and stuff. So let's say you and I played lead. I'm going to throw my first stone. You're going to throw your first stone. I'm going to throw my second stone. You're going to throw your second stone. Nancy plays second, so then when she throws her stone, you would sweep for her. Then the third, and then the team captain, the skip, will come back down and throw his two stones, right? So it alternates back and forth between the two teams. And I said at the beginning, when you flip the coin to see who's going to go first, having that last rock going last is a big advantage because it gives you the chance to score, right? You can knock somebody out, you can hit rocks out, you can curl in behind them, you can do all kinds of stuff. Is there anything on that slide that I missed there? No, I think I got it. We talked about the game being divided into ends and that we play 6. Some clubs play 8. The benefits, winter goes by a lot faster. You get out, you get to have fun, you get moving, you got a place on the calendar every week to look forward to. You're doing something new, you make new friends, you're gonna be pretty tight with the folks that you play with every week on your team. You're gonna play a different team every week. When you and I are sweeping a stone, we get to talk a little bit in between stones. We're gonna get a chance to talk with the opposing team when, before another stone goes past. In an 8-end game, you're going to walk about 2 miles. That doesn't count all the exercise from all the sweeping, which, depending on how hard you sweep and how much encouragement you get from your skip, could be pretty vigorous. And then after the game, there's a social time called broom stacking. So in curling, there's a tradition that the winners buy the losers a drink. Nodding of heads here. You played when you were growing up. So it could be a beer, could be a sarsaparilla, whatever you like. It doesn't have to be an alcoholic drink. We generally go to an establishment after we play. And the last one that I put on that particular slide is the opportunity to travel to tournaments. So if you wanted to go from our club and play at Buffalo, or you wanted to play at Pittsburgh when they have a tournament, you can get a team together from fellow club members and go to one of those tournaments and play. One of the other benefits I think that Meadville really has going for it, there's a club in Pittsburgh, there's actually 3 clubs in Cleveland, there's a club in Buffalo, and in Southern Ontario, which when I mentioned those cities, there's about 30 clubs within a 4.5 to 5 hour driving distance in Southern Ontario. There's a club in Columbus, there's a club in Rochester. All of those are they're not short drives, but they're all within driving distance if you wanted to go and make a weekend of it and meet new people from around the region, see different cities, go out with your club members and go make a weekend of something and get out of town. You can travel to tournaments, and you can travel to as many as you want, or maybe 1 or 2 a season or whatever you'd like to. So I got a couple thank yous that I want to throw out. One, thanks for coming this evening. I want to thank Mark, not only the staff, but also the board. We wouldn't be curling there if it wasn't because they didn't believe in the curling that was going on there. And part of thanking Mark, I think, is also thanking the existing user groups that are there. Certainly a facility that's known for hockey, but we're really pleased to be one of the user groups that are now part of that Mark family. The Pittsburgh Curling Club came up and helped us get started when we started out there. And our company sponsors, Accutech, Ainsworth, Schaefer Law, and Meadville Medical Center also put together a team. So our inaugural curling season this year wouldn't be happening without all those folks. So you can find us on Facebook, or you can find us at FrenchCreekCurlingClub.org. Around the Winter Olympics, we're going to have some more learn to curl or experience curling type events. I think there's generally an upswing in interest in the sport when they see it during the Winter Olympics, and so if you check those outlets on the web, you'll find out more about those events coming up, and we'd love to see folks there. So this is from one of our experience curling events. The gentleman in the curling stone hat is Dan from the Pittsburgh Curling Club, who also curls with us. He lives in the Grove City area and splits his time between the 2 clubs. We always thought that was a pretty fun picture. So what questions can I answer for you? I know you wanted to learn more about the game before you saw it in the Olympics, and I'm certain I didn't cover everything. I know I've got some information for folks to take with them, but
Do you have to buy special shoes?
do you have to buy special shoes?
Yeah.
I have special shoes, yes. Do you need special shoes when you come to us to do an event? No. So the bottom of one of the shoes is slippery, so you can press out of those starting block things that I talked about called the hacks to slide out. But we just have a device that you can step on, and it will grip onto the bottom of your shoe as you slide out and do that. So to get started, we supply everything that you need. If you get more into it and you want to buy special shoes, you certainly can do that. So, yep. We supply all the club brooms, all that kind of stuff. I have my own shoes and own brooms.
Strategy question. So if you do get the short stick and you drop, you have to go first.
Yes.
Do you want to line up your stones in a way to try and block the other team from being able to get to the house?
There's a couple of different strategies that you can take. You can set a couple of stones in front of the house to begin with, and then everybody tries to get behind them. I've seen a strategy where you try and get a stone in the back of the house, and then you try and get a stone in the opposite front corner because your opponent can't take them both out, right? And then from there, you're going to play off of whatever else happens in the end. You can play a simple takeout game, which is if they throw one in the house, take it out, right? Just keep taking it out. And then
if you go last, then you have a chance.
And then if you go last, just park one in the paint and you should get out of the end with one. If it's a takeout game and you don't have the hammer, then you want to come down and try and set on one, right? So instead of hitting it out, you want to try and just have your stone touching another, because when they try to hit it, the one at the back will go out, not your stone, right? So there's all kinds of different strategies. If you're really into it, you can read all about it on the internet. You'll watch the Olympics. The commentators will take an entire game apart for you because that's their job and they want to fill and make it compelling and interesting. There's a lot of stuff you can watch on YouTube that will explain the strategy of the game as you go. But that's sort of a brief overview of a couple of different ways that skips might attack a game. Yeah.
If I'm right-handed or if I'm left-handed, can I make a right-hander curl or
Yes.
right?
Yeah, you can make it curl either direction regardless of which hand is your dominant hand to throw from. The only thing that changes which hand is your dominant hand is which hack you leave from. So if you're right hand dominant, you would leave from one side, and if you're left hand dominant, you'd leave from the other hack.
So the other end of that question is if I am right-handed, should I try and curl one way? Is it going to be more?
Your skip's going to call that. The direction that your skip calls a stone to curl from has more to do with the read of the ice and what they're trying to accomplish with stones ending up at the other end of the ice than it has to do with which hand you're dominant.
So is the essence of the game, is it more of an offensive game or a defensive game?
That's a good question. I'd say that the game has changed a lot, probably in the last 20 years. The game is much more in the middle than it used to be, and I think it has made it a more offensive game than it used to be, particularly with changing free guard zone rules, which I don't have to go into a ton now if you want to read about it as you go. Like I said, it's all out there on the internet, but I think it's gotten to be a much more offensive game than it used to be over time. So you played growing up and probably watched it on the Olympics over time. What do you think?
Well, I think the last few times that I've seen the Olympics, or if I've been at home and watched some of the Briar or whatnot, it seems like they are making, I'm going to call it a play. They are landing stones where you're like, oh my gosh, how did that
Much more
ever
precision.
get there?
Yeah.
Like, how did it ever, like it's maneuvering around multiple obstacles and landing just where they wanted it.
And when they do throw takeouts, it's never a simple one hit.
No.
It's always multiple combination
Exactly.
takeout
We're
hits.
gonna take
Yeah.
out this and then that's gonna hit off. And
I'm going to hit here and go over here and hit there, and then something magical is going to happen.
Correct.
Yeah, it's gotten to be a very complicated technical game. Yeah. Yeah. On Wednesday nights when we play, somebody asked me, they said that, tell me the difference between what you're doing and what the Olympics does. And I said, well, it's why basketball and the Cavaliers, right? We have a great time, and it would be awesome to see somebody go, from any of the clubs that I've played at or any of the surrounding clubs go to the Olympics, or something like that. But really what happens at the Olympics is just fabulously technical and really good athletes. And they work out just like any other Olympic athlete. They run, they hit the gym, all those kinds of things. So
Average age of Olympian curler?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a really good question that would be interesting to know. What I've always remarked on, regardless of country, whether it's a Canadian Olympic curler or an American Olympic curler, is that they all seem to be very down to earth and very personable when they do an interview. Compared to maybe like a very technical downhill ski racer from some European country or something where they've got all kinds of high level sponsorships and they're going 120 kilometers an hour or something, where I feel like, well, I could go broomstack with that guy. We could probably go have a beverage, you know what I mean? But that's just my own personal take on it, and I don't mean to besmirch anybody who's into ski racing. That was not my point. So.
Our local cable, back in the day, there were 12 channels. One from Pittsburgh, one from Cleveland, one from Youngstown, 3 from Erie, 4 from Erie, I guess, and 1 from London, Ontario.
Yes.
And every Saturday, they would have London, Ontario would have curling on. You and I have talked about this before. Is London, Ontario, is that some sort of a mecca for curling, or?
So we were talking before I started to present, I think there's something like 2.5 million curlers worldwide, and 1.3 million of them are in Canada. And so I think everybody thinks of hockey when they think of Canada and sports, but by participation, it's a curling country by far. And I talked about how I started curling and I went to a Learn to Curl, but my father was a huge hockey fan, and growing up in Western Erie County before cable, we always watched Channel 10 out of London, Ontario, and over-the-air broadcast, and so I frequently watched curling on television before the venerable Hockey Night in Canada, and that's how I was aware of curling and wanted to try it when I had the opportunity. So, yeah. Did I answer your questions enough so that when you watch Olympic curling, you feel like you know more than you did before you came here tonight, and go, I can watch that and understand it and enjoy it?
Yes.
Along with the take-home materials.
Yeah.
So you should come on a Wednesday evening to the Meadville Area Recreation Complex, and you should watch us curl. And then when we have a Learn to Curl or a Experience Curling event, you should come do it. And after you've seen it on the Olympics and have done it, you'll be like, all right, I really get this.
Yeah, I should.
But you always learn best by doing. So I would invite anybody to come and join us at any of our upcoming events, or even just come and watch. And if you watched and then wanted to come broomstack with us, we're a very welcoming group. I think is a good way to put it. So.
And it's Wednesday nights for how long is the season?
So I think we're going to go to the end of February, first week in March. We are trying to get a 12-week season in this year. So, we get the ice at 6:30. We have to prep the ice, so they do a dry cut to get that gloss off, and we have to pebble it. So we actually start curling at 7 on Wednesdays. So.
See, that's when I'd be ice skating. I grew up on outside ponds.
Outside ponds have a very pebbly surface, don't they? Yeah.
Be on the rough stuff, I'm going.
So. Well, again, additional question.
Some of our local taverns and things have like a tabletop shuffleboard game.
Yeah.
Curling seems like it's almost the same thing, score-wise and strategy-wise and so on. Is it or isn't it?
I would say it's very similar. I would say the dynamics of the game are a little bit different in that once that shuffleboard puck leaves your stick, or if it's the tabletop game, your hand, you're no longer able to affect the path or the distance that is going to travel. And there's also not a teammate dynamic to it. So when I let go of my curling stone, my teammates can affect the distance and the final resting spot of that stone, which you can't do. And there's a dynamic between us where we can kind of depend on each other, and we're communicating about how that's going to happen. And that team dynamic is a lot of fun. And kind of translates to that social aspect of the game, and the good sportsmanship aspect of that game. We always cheer a good shot, whether it's on my team or the opposing team, and that sort of translates over to the social time afterwards. So it's a little bit different, but I think the scoring and general notion of them are obviously very similar. Yeah. So. Well, I appreciate your attention, and again, thanks to all the folks that I listed there, and we're very pleased to be curling in Meadville. So we hope to see you at Mark. Thanks for having me.
I'm ready. Are you?
Watch the Winter Olympics February 8th to the 25th on WICU.